also the thing as well of it's not an apology.
No.
There's like I think it goes around every now and again whenever a YouTuber has to apologise for doing some awful thing.
There's been a lot of that shit lately.
That video that guy made, again I forget the name, but is like, it's every YouTuber's apology, and it's like you sat on the floor, you're wearing like your sweats and a baggy hoodie, you got no makeup on, you got red around your eyes, you've been crying. It always starts with the well, and then it's just you walk around the actual problem for 5 minutes with lots of jump cuts between your sentences while never actually addressing anything you're apologising for. It's like, fuck you.
Yeah,
no.
And I saw someone, I won't like point out exactly who it was, and it was someone in the Smash community talking about not something that like they've done, but just, addressing the whole shit show in general, and they were like, made a point to say, I am streaming this live so that I won't cut out any of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's like how to make a statement is not, I'm going to record something for half an hour and cut it down to a 3-minute video where it's very choppy and I'm trying to specifically think about every single word. Like the PR response. Mm-hmm. It's just, no, I'm going to openly talk about this.
Yeah, because there's nothing... there's like, there are things, but like one of the things that really frustrates me about this is the response that was very obviously drafted by a PR person, like the non-apology apology of like, they just put out a blanket statement on social media that's a screenshot of something they wrote on Notepad. It's like, the fucking balls to directly address what it is you did. Because
and it's always I've learned from my mistakes. Well, what was your mistake? Are you going to admit to it? Just no, I've learned from it and I'm asking for forgiveness.
Please don't talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm going to find it because there's a great image. Where it's like how to make an actual apology.
Oh, right, okay.
So I'm going to try and find the breakdown of like how an apology is the thing. It's where is it now?
Oh, Karl just figuring it out. He's trying his best. He's trying to find it.
Yeah, here we go. So there's multiple versions of this out there, but this is a breakdown of how to make an actual apology, not like a wishy-washy one where you refuse to admit any fault. And it is, step 1, include the words I'm sorry or I apologise. Don't say I regret or some variation thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because, again, you're apologising. Don't say, I regret if anyone has been hurt by my actions. No, fuck you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for what I did.
I'm sorry for what I did. And then, moving on, like quite handily, take responsibility. Name what you did. Specify what you're apologising for. Don't refer to it as the incident or other examples thereof. Yeah. Don't try and distance yourself from the thing you are trying to apologise for. And I'm sorry if this sounds really obvious, but so many of these cases have people doing the exact opposite of this because they know.
Yeah, like, there is a reason that people get paid to write responses like this.
Because you need to be able to, like, they're all crafted in a way where you never actually have to say what it is what you did. It's like, and the example that always springs to mind for me is PewDiePie's apology for saying the N-word. Apology in big words, where he never actually admits or says what it is he did. Because if he did, then he'd have to have that voice clip out there of him admitting that he said the N-word.
And that's what they never want.
Because they don't want that to exist, but they also want you to stop talking about it. So they make this shitty non-apology apology where they never actually admit any fault. Anyway, moving on. The third one, this is the most important one, is show that you understand the impact of your actions on the other person.
That's a good point to make there, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something you never really see, isn't it? It's like, they always say, I'm sorry if you were hurt. They never say, like, why people are hurt, or they never, like, try and just theorize why what they've done may have hurt another person, or put themselves in the position of the people they're apologizing to. Show basic human empathy.
Yeah, it's again just always trying to like skirt around the facts of what they did, and it will always be put in the perspective of I didn't intend to do this. It's not, let's look at the perspective of the other person and talk about it from their point of view. Mm-hmm. It's let's talk about me and how it's important to me and my life. Yeah, it's just maybe, as you say, have a bit of fucking empathy. Put yourself in someone else's shoes for a minute.
Yeah. Don't try and distance yourself from the thing that you are trying to address. And then fourth step, if possible, explain how it's not going to happen again or how you're going to make reparations. And usually it's just, I'll never do it again.
I'm really sorry, guys. I've learned from my mistake. It's like, fuck off.
It's like, how? If you have learned from your mistake, demonstrate how. Explain how.
And explain what you're going to do. And there's a lot of talk about like companies lately now that there's been another kind of movement of people coming out and talking about harassment and allegations and etc. etc. And a lot of companies have just come out of like,
we're sorry.
We're sorry, we will be better. It's like, how are you going to do better in the future?
Yeah, and that's the problem. You'll see, again, going to these like shitty YouTuber apologies and like even the John Cheese one, which is a hilarious read. Because it was written by a guy who the day previously was doing everything he's supposedly apologising for.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I only apologise the instant I realise it'll affect my bottom line. Yes, I buy this one 100%.
Well, it's the classic of, I'm sorry I got caught.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to try harder to be better as a person. How?
Yeah.
What are you specifically going to do to avoid this happening again in the future? And then finally, I think this is a really good point that's often left out of like many apologies. If you're not sorry, don't apologise, because it's better to not apologise than issue a bad apology. Which sounds like a dick move, but stick to your fucking guns. Like, most of the people making these shitty non-apologies are assholes anyway. Just commit to being a dick.
And it's not that it will, necessarily be any better for you in like the short or long term, but at least don't try to half-arse a fucking apology that everyone's going to see through immediately.
Do you know what the best bit about that is? I think this will really put into perspective the emotional maturity of the people we're referring to, like, who are unable to admit fault or just make a proper apology. That's a guide for kids.
Oh.
That was a guide for children about how to properly make an apology when you hurt somebody.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's good advice, but I think
about that.
An adult and need to be told, like,
literally, here's how we explain to children how to understand what you did was wrong and how to say sorry for taking someone's toys.
And I think one point I want to add to this guide is not applicable to children necessarily, but one thing to not do is when they always do it. They always either start or mention in the video, it was a real hard time for me. I was going through some shit.
No, don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care how hard your life was, because a lot of people are struggling, and a lot of those people, when they're struggling, they don't actively go and make other people's lives worse.
Exactly, and it's just that always moment of, I'm going to try and make myself the victim a little bit here. It's like, fuck off. No, you're not.
It's like, I've been going through a real rough time, struggling with depression. It's like, yeah, a lot of people do. And you know what they don't do? Go out and sexually harass people.
And yeah, a lot of the people that, like, whether or not the person that you've harassed has been suffering, they are now. And you've made the world a fucking worse place.
And it's that thing of it goes into, again, distancing. Because it's like a really subtle thing, but when you notice it, and I'm pointing out now, I'm hoping people like you keep an eye out for this in the future. If you hear someone, you see one of these big apologies from a famous person or a creator or something, where it's just any little thing to make it so, like, to make it seem like the person who did the things that they're apologizing for isn't them.
Yeah.
Anything that they can do to make it like, oh, I apologize for my actions. I wasn't feeling myself. That sort of thing. Because you were, because this is the clearest window into yourself we're gonna get. Because this is how you act when you think nobody's watching and you're not going to get caught. This is the best representation of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of stuff you do when you think you have nobody else watching.
Yep.
And in fact, the response that you're giving to this is the fakest part of it.
Yeah, it's so true.
It's always that one, is it? It's, if you want to see what someone's really like see what they do when they think no one's watching.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's a great collection of interviews, like interviews with prospective employers. Of like, what's something an employee did that like a prospective employee did when they didn't think anyone was watching that made you like want to hire them. And one was, I was just saw a guy sat in the waiting room, and he walked across the room to pick up a piece of rubbish and put it in the bin. And no one was watching him. Like, he didn't have to do that, but the fact that he sat there, saw it, and went, I'm going to fix this problem, made me realise this is probably a good guy. Like, just that little window into their personality was enough for me to think this is probably someone I want to work with.
That's a really nice little thing, yeah.
But it's one of those like minor things, isn't it, where you don't really... Like, it just says a lot about a person. It's such a minor act, but yeah. It made me decide then and there, like, he was equally as qualified as all the candidates I had, but that act then made me think, okay, maybe there's more to this person than this piece of paper I have in front of me suggests. I give them the chances over someone else, and they're one of the best workers I ever had. So I just thought that's always stuck with me, of that one little thing that person did, of just like nonchalantly just picking up rubbish, making something their problem even though it wasn't supposed to be, because they felt like, I know it's like picking up a piece of rubbish is not a big deal, but that is to a lot of people, considering there are a not insignificant amount of people who will literally just throw rubbish on the street.
Yeah, and I think it says it all of, not that it's a big problem, more just the fact that they went out of their way to just make something a little bit nicer.
Mm-hmm.
Just that's all it needs to be, is just a little bit of effort.
And it gives you a little glimpse into that person's personality and who they are as a person, where they don't think they have to put on a mask or a face, because everybody does.
Yeah. To some degree, everybody does.
Even in private, when they're like, not in private, but in private with other people, like even with loved ones and things like that, people tend to put on at least some kind of a mask, or they like change who they are a little bit.
And that's like kind of just naturally the way humans work. It's not something to feel called out on or feel like annoyed about. No, it's just how people are.
Just everyone acts in a way, and that's why I like that thing of that's not who I am as a person. So it really is, because that's what you do when no one else is around. That's like the most you thing ever.
Yeah.
Like why do you act less? Like, why do you not act the way you do now in private? Should it be the other way around?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if that's not who you are as a person, wouldn't that be the way you act when you're not in private?
Mm-hmm.
And that never gets brought up, and I kind of wish it would. When you see one of these shitty, wishy-washy apologies and someone says that phrase, why doesn't someone bring up, but it's something you did in private?
Yeah, true.
Like, why don't you act in private the way you do publicly then? Why do you act differently in private than you do now when you don't think you're being watched?
Mm-hmm. I know, man. It's just a very, like, awful way to quote-unquote apologise for things, of just like, yeah, the classic of, I was going through a rough time. That's not the way I normally am. And it's just, man, like, yes, it is.
The other classic of, I'm sorry if you were hurt. Because you're not apologising that I'm hurt. You're apologising for what you did.
Yeah.
And that's why I've probably said it multiple times, but I really, really like the analogy I came up with. It's probably not unique, but I'm fairly certain I came up with this independently while just brainstorming.
Oh God, Karl, have you been plagiarising thoughts?
I might have done it. I'm really paranoid about this. I can get into that afterwards, but it's the analogy or metaphor or whatever. So I'm half wrong, half right, hopefully. Of when you offend somebody, replace the words offend with stepped on their toes. So, for example, we can use Ricky Gervais, because I fucking hate that guy. He's a prick. When he's out there going, I'm sorry if I offended you. Like, and that's like his whole shtick of saying offensive things and then making fun of people for being offended.
Yeah.
And like, it's a whole thing online of like, oh yeah, people get offended about everything these days. Like, imagine, like, for a moment that instead, like, just mentally replace the words offended someone with steps on their toes.
Yeah.
And this is how I always picture it. It's how I've explained to more people. And it's turned a few people's, like, it's at the very least made them like do that thing where they go, huh, I never thought of it like that. And the way I've approached it is that we can use an example from my own life.
Okay.
One time in a Fact Fiend video, we were talking about Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
And we were referring specifically to, trust me, it's going somewhere, folks. And the new series of Scooby-Doo, it's What's New Scooby-Doo, I think it is, or Mystery Incorporated.
Okay, yeah.
But it's a series of Scooby-Doo where there's an overarching plot. And something me and Brad talk about when we were recording that episode is that the character Fred is obsessed with setting and laying traps.
Mm-hmm.
Because in all of it's this thing in Scooby-Doo where whenever they want to catch the villain, Fred will set a trap.
Yeah, and there's always like a plan in place of like you do X and Y and we'll catch the villain.
And they basically turn that up to 11 and make it so he's just so obsessed with the ideas of laying and setting traps. And he's always formulating how to set traps. And they even catch him reading a magazine. It's like, oh, it's a dirty magazine. And he's like, no, I'm not doing anything. And they pull it out from under the bed and it's Traps Monthly. And it's like a box with a stick holding it up.
Oh my god.
And it's like a magazine about how to lay traps for villains. Yeah. And it's a really dumb joke. And me and Bradley talked about that. And I was reached out to by a fan who informed me that that term, trap, is used as a slur against trans people.
Oh, okay.
The idea that a trans woman is a trap. Because, you thought it was a woman, but no, it's really a man. And I was so fucking... Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
But I thought in my head, this is where I have two options. And option one is the Ricky Gervais approach, as I call it. And it is just, I'm sorry that you were offended. I know I didn't mean to hurt anyone when I said that. So fuck you.
Yeah, basically.
And I sat down, because it took me about an hour to write the response to this person. I sat down, I thought, well, I know I didn't mean to hurt this person. I know, it's a completely innocent mistake, but innocent mistakes can still hurt people. And that's when I came up with the stepping on someone's foot analogy in my head of, let's say, for example, I stepped on your toe, Lucas.
Yeah.
And you come to me and you say, Karl, you just stepped on my toe. What would be the correct response there?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, mate. I didn't mean to step on your toe. And that's probably where that interaction would end.
Yeah.
And even if that happened with a complete stranger, say I'm in the street with a complete stranger, I step on that stranger's toe. It's like, oh, you just stepped on my... Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, it's okay. It's like, be a bit careful. And say, yeah, I will. Keep my eye out next time. That's it.
Yeah.
All right, let's just say, and you can say the same thing. I said something, and it offended a person. I didn't mean to, but it still did.
Yeah.
I can't change the fact that it did.
You can't deny the fact that they were offended.
So I'd say, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'll try to, avoid doing that in the future. I'll try to avoid stepping on your toes.
Yeah.
Now imagine in that scenario, you do the Ricky Gervais thing of you step on someone's toe, and they turn around and say, oh, you just stepped on my toe? Well, it was a fucking accident. What are you getting so offended? What are you getting so mad at me for? Now you've made it a problem.
Yeah, and I've actually had somebody literally respond in a similar way when I said, mate, you stepped on my toes.
Well, I didn't mean to. Why are you making a big deal about it?
And it's like, oh, well, fuck off. Obviously, it was a mistake. And it's like, so now you've become aggressive.
So it was a mistake, but now you've made it into a whole thing because you can't admit fault, even when you know it was an accident. And doesn't that work really well?
It does, yeah.
And then you can even go to the next level of it let's say a person is continually stepping on my toe. After a while, I'm going to stop believing that it's an accident.
Yeah.
Like, let's say one person, every time I walk past them in the hallway, steps on my toe. And the first time, they say sorry. Like, oh, fair enough, it's a mistake. And then they do it again. And then again. And then again. After a while, I want to start thinking they're doing it on purpose. Or they, at the very least, don't care that they're stepping on my toe. And they actually don't mean that apology of, I didn't mean to do it. I'm sorry if it hurt your toe a little bit. And now replace the word stepping on your toe with repeatedly saying the N-word in YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And let's pretend the person who's stepping on my toe is called PewDiePie. Don't those apologies start to ring a little bit hollow after a while?
Yeah.
Like the first time, maybe it was a mistake. The third time, maybe something's going on here. No one accidentally steps on someone's toe 3 times in a row.
And I will say as well that, like, in regards specifically to, people using racial slurs, is me and you have said this in the past, is, okay, well, you can apologise and say you didn't intend to. But why is that in your regular vocabulary anyway, to the point where you'd shout it out accidentally?
Which is a whole other kettle of fish.
It is,
go back to the offended thing of, if someone says a joke like that, and they apologise, but then they make the joke again, and then again, and they keep making these transphobic, homophobic, racially discriminatory jokes over and over again, and then apologise when they, I'm sorry, I didn't realise that I was offending people. It's like, you do now, because it's been pointed out multiple times.
Yeah.
It's like Jeremy Clarkson is a great example of that, where he has had to apologise multiple times on the BBC, in episodes of Top Gear, using racial slurs.
Mm-hmm.
And every time he's had to do that, his apology rings a little bit more hollow.
To the point where now he's just like, for other reasons as well, not allowed on the BBC, right?
Yeah, and it's that thing, and it's like, you go Ricky Gervais where it's like, but it's not comparable to like the offended thing and stepping on someone's toe. When you're intentionally stepping on people's toes and then making fun of them for saying you hurt my toe.
And it's specifically regards to like Ricky Gervais, for example, when he, I can't remember which award show it is that he often hosts, but when he does that,
Golden Globes.
Yeah, the Golden Globes. He essentially finds out like who's in the audience and intentionally writes offensive jokes towards them, and then the day after you'll see it's a big controversy as he like takes shots at every single person in the fucking crowd, and he's like, well, it was only a joke. And it's like, but you do it every year and you intend to do it every year.
Yeah, and in his comedy shows recently, he's like taking a lot of swipes at trans people. Like he's literally made I identify as attack helicopter jokes.
Oh no.
And then says, well, I'm sorry if people are offended. It's like, it's my right to tell these jokes. It is, but like the same way that people laugh when you tell jokes, people can be annoyed by them. And it's really funny as well. Like, the reason I like singling out Ricky Gervais for this is because he makes such a big fucking fuss about people getting offended at his comedy. And people go out of their way to be offended by anything these days. He name searches himself on Twitter to argue with people who say he's not funny. That's why it's so amazingly ironic. It's like the same guy who's like, people get too offended by anything these days. People need to take themselves less seriously. Name searches himself on Twitter to argue with people who say he's not funny, to tell them how rich he is. And it's like, fucking hell. Like, it wouldn't be as funny if he listens to it. Like, and clearly, he's a massive hypocrite.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what makes it so funny. But to go back to that thing that I thought about this, and I made a really heartfelt apology. It took me an hour and a half to write. I apologised, but it's like, look, it was a completely innocent mistake, but that doesn't change the fact it still hurt you, and I wouldn't want anyone watching my content to feel hurt, whether intentionally or not. I wholeheartedly apologise. And I got a few people like applaud me for that apology, which I don't think was necessary, because like that's what an apology is. You don't need to be applauded for an apology, because an apology by its definition is like an act of contrition, and it's given willingly. You don't need to be encouraged to give an apology. You do it because it's the right thing to do. But by the same token, I also had people like giving me shit for apologising because you didn't do anything wrong. It's like, it doesn't matter that I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah,
I still hurt the person.
It's like, I did see people when you like, because you made like a statement publicly, didn't you? Because obviously, if one person could be offended by this, I want to make sure anyone else that hasn't spoken to me about it can know as well.
Which is the reason I leave my DMs open, because even though I don't really respond to messages, I still want people who may have those things who don't want to air them publicly because they'll get made fun of by dickheads to be able to do them to me. And I do like reach out to people who send them messages like that, like to apologise or like say thank you if it's something a bit personal.
And obviously you want to keep that like thing, that place intact for people to contact you safely. But the fact that there were people going, well, you did nothing fucking wrong. Like, screw that person. You didn't intend it that way. And it's like, just because I didn't intend it that way doesn't mean the person on the other side didn't get hurt. Yeah,
and the way I've summed it up is, like, I can't control how people respond to what I say. It's like, you can't help if what you say might offend somebody. What you can do is control your response to when they tell you that. And I think it's not so much what you say as how you respond to people. It's like, getting offended by it is what speaks to your character.
Totally, yeah.
And the people who do the thing of, well, I shouldn't have to apologise, I didn't do anything wrong. It's like, yeah, but you still hurt somebody.
And there's been times in my life where, not so publicly, I've said something, like said a word or made a statement that somebody's turned around and gone, oh, well, I don't know if you know or if you mean it that way, but you could be quite offensive saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's on the onus to you for you to turn around and just make a little moment of like self-reflection of, okay, well, I could attack this person for calling me out, or I could just learn from the mistake and apologize.
And that's the part that speaks to your character, not the initial statement itself. And I think that's something that gets lost in the sauce a lot when stuff like this happens, like it did with me. Like, it was a completely innocent mistake, but there were two options I had available to me. That I could have ignored it, or I could have even done like someone like Gervais or any other of those like shitty internet edgelords done, and made fun of that person. Of look at them getting offended for literally a joke that they have like taken the wrong way. It's like, no, I'm going to take, the actual human route of, like, it's clearly not something that ever occurred to me because I don't live this person's life.
Exactly, yeah.
And the person who reached out to me was trans themselves, and they said in their message to me that I know you as a person from your videos, so I've watched them for a long time, that you didn't mean it this way, but others might.
Exactly, yeah.
And I was like, I really appreciate you telling me this, and that's why I made that apology. And it's really telling to people's character when they see something like that and then get mad about it.
It's like, nah, fuck the person for getting offended, man.
Yeah, and then you go back to the stepping on the toes analogy, like, which I'm guessing, like you said, it's happened. I've had it happen to me once, twice in the past. And like someone bumps into you in a queue or something like that, and it's like, oh mate, excuse me, and they tell you to fuck off. They get mad that you call them out for being a dick.
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
Something. It's like, oh well. At first I thought it was an accident, but now I know it's you just don't care about other people.
Yeah, you're just a fucking arsehole, aren't you?
Yeah, it's nice to have that confirmation.
Yeah.